Matt Slepin, I am delighted that you're here in the studio with me today. I so appreciate the perspective that you bring to the topic of affordable housing, but also the topic of leadership within affordable housing. Mm-hmm. You have been a fixture and an absolute legend at helping to fill out executive teams, help to staff up, really critical functions within our industry. And you've seen a lot of organizations at pivot points historically. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to start with this one, is in these dynamic times that we're in and challenging times, what trait are you seeing as most important for our leaders?
Yeah. I'm going to answer this with a tiny bit of background and perspective if I can, because I think It's important. Mm-hmm. And so, one, we've known each other for 20 years, and you're one of my favorite CHROs and advisors that I've worked with. So big hugs across the ether to you, because you matter, and we've had just a wonderful collaborative relationship.
Thank you.
You're going to say this in your introduction, but I am a recruiter and I work in the real estate space writ large. And I co-lead the real estate practice at a company called ZRG Partners. I sold my company, Terra Search Partners, to ZRG 3.5 years ago. So that's what brings me here. And ZRG is one of the 7th largest talent consulting firm in the world. And I co-lead the real estate practice. And that means that my search business is across all sectors of real estate. Mm-hmm. I do about half of my work personally in the apartment business, and about half of the work in the apartment business is done in affordable housing, and about half of the affordable housing work is done with nonprofits, and about half with for-profits in this space. Mm-hmm. So that's point number one, and I'll keep coming back to that context with the answers that we're talking about. Mm-hmm. And then the second thing, for 7 years, I've hosted a podcast like this one called Leading Voices in Real Estate. We've done 200 and some odd episodes. And so I've talked to leaders across the industry that complements my work with those leaders on the talent acquisition side. Now I talk to them in conversations like these, and I think through what leadership means, most largely from those conversations, as well as the work I do in search. Mm-hmm. So that background and perspective and the kind of the breadth of the work that I do is important to answer your question. But now I'll try to answer your question, which is the leadership trait in these interesting times. And I'll mash up two interesting things about these times. So one is a new administration that's been really challenging and lots of change in industry. We don't know how permanent this is. We don't know what that means, but that's challenge number one. And then challenge number two, that might be behind challenge number one to some degree, I think, is the technology revolution, particularly the coming AI. Mm-hmm. And I think the ripples of what AI is going to do across the board are so rippling. It's like a big storm in the ocean saying, what the heck's going on? What the heck's going on? Mm-hmm. And what's going to come to us, and what's it going to mean for our residents? What's it going to mean for our businesses? What's it going to mean for our lives? So those questions and the administration together bring a level of uncertainty that is mind-numbing to those of us who are used to somewhat of a stable world to live in. Okay, so if we take those two things and put that behind the question that you asked me, I think what matters is the ability for a leader to transition, to get through these intense times, longer term thinking, keeping calm, adaptability, flexibility, curiosity. Mm-hmm. I think those things help you to do that. And when one's on a boat that you're getting seasick on the deck, don't look at your feet, look at the horizon, right? And I think that's a metaphor for this, because look out 5 years, the administration will change. Mm-hmm. I don't know in what direction. Mm-hmm. I don't know what's permanent. I don't know what's transitory in that. AI will be upon us, and those revolutions will be upon us. So the ability to sit there looking at the horizon, for your feet to be able to jog with whatever's happening, that adaptability, I think, is the most important talent set needed right now. Yeah. For our lives and for being leaders, because it's the same thing.
Yeah, absolutely. When I love the expression about looking out at the horizon rather than looking at our feet, right? Because that's looking at your feet is a surefire way to get seasick, right? Yep. if I can look out to the horizon, I can see where we're heading. I can see the storm and how it's evolving, right? I can see the waves. I also know how my boat's responding to all of that. It's a great metaphor. When we think about leaders and looking out to the horizon, what does that actually translate to, right? Especially our younger leaders that have come up through COVID and chaos, right? How would you describe the behaviors of a leader that does that well?
So we had a session about 3 weeks ago in San Francisco, and I brought together leaders from across real estate companies. We're going to do another one in a couple weeks in Chicago, same conversation. And I had 18 leaders, I think, CEOs, CIOs, whatever the right term is, for people across the real estate spectrum. There was one nonprofit housing person in the room. And the topic was, what is the change to our business platforms? We'll come back to what that word means. And what does AI and technology mean within those changes? And I had a room full of people. So the average age range was probably 50 through 69 or something, right?
Mm-hmm.
And everyone's been through multiple cycles. So I think one thing that matters, and I saw this in the GFC myself, and I saw it in COVID myself, is when the GFC happened, I'd experienced it twice before. Mm-hmm. And we all heard a lot of leaders talk about, oh, it's my third recession or whatever the number was. But having been through it before matters, because then there's, to that perspective of long view, we're going to get through this. It means something. There will be a business here. Mm-hmm. So that ability to look outward is important. Now, back to the room. I was in a room with, 18 friends. I knew all these people for years. And we were roundtable talking about what AI means. And we weren't talking about little picture. Well, I do this, I do that. They're all trying to figure it out. So they're all open, and they know for their companies that they have to be thinking about what's relevant, what's irrelevant, and what's the high level meaning for all these things. So what impresses me about leaders from these times, but most times, is you're tactical, but you're looking long term as well. Mm-hmm. And so they're thinking, okay, well, this means a lot for my company. It means a lot for my business. Will my business be here? That was a question being asked. Yeah. Will my residents be here? Can they afford to, will this displace our residents? Will it displace my employees? Will this displace my investors? So if you're looking at all those levels and the ability to look at multiple levels and then jump right down to the granular is a fascinating thing that leaders do after they've learned their business. You have to go to school. And your first 20 years of your career, to me, is school. Mm-hmm. So how do you gain those experiences and then draw from those experiences to make references to do the kinds of things you have to do?
And so I think it's remarkable how you've described the participants in the room, as well as your own clients, right? Mm-hmm. The real estate organizations that you've worked with for years, right? Half affordable, half again, right? Nonprofit. Mm-hmm. Many of the organizations that I work with are nonprofit affordable housing organizations, right? Mm-hmm. And my 12 years at Mercy, how you and I had a chance to meet really and get this whole conversation started. There has been a dynamic of, gosh, I just wish the affordable housing space would see this, mm-hmm. right? And you and I have had great conversations that have started that way. Mm-hmm. At this moment in time, how might you finish that sentence? I wish the affordable housing. And so it's like, is there an unheralded sort of skill or behavior that you're looking for from leaders in the affordable housing nonprofit space? Is there an opportunity or a missed opportunity that's in the space right now that you'd like for them to pay attention to or to see?
Yeah, so I think there's a couple of themes to this. And so let's explore some of the themes. When I was a kid and I was in college, there was a famous book called Small is Beautiful. And it was really influential to me as a 18-year-old political science student. And Small is Beautiful is really cool. And things happen in neighborhoods that are absolutely wonderful. Mm-hmm. So it's great. And decentralization, we have less dysfunction politically at the neighborhood and the city level than we do at the national level. So there's things that locally really matter. But Small is Beautiful sits alongside Size and Scale. And so much in the real estate business through my career in all of these different sectors has become about institutionalization, size, and scale. So that's theme number one. What do we do about size and scale? Theme number two, and it's interesting, and I've given a couple talks about this that you may have been in the room, to people in the affordable space, or particularly people in the nonprofit affordable space. Go back to my metaphor before, which is my career or my clients, but let's put it in a different perspective. Think about affordable, nonprofit affordable might be 1/3 of affordable housing owner operators, only a third, probably a quarter actually. So something like that, maybe 20%. It's a percentage, but people in that space think they are the whole world. So if the nonprofit affordable people realize they're part of the affordable universe, and how does the whole affordable universe with the for-profits and the nonprofits behave? How do they operate? What are best practices across not the other nonprofits, but across that whole sector? But then realize that's just a corner of the multifamily universe. So take the level up one time and then go to the multifamily business. One thing I've learned is that affordable capital A subsidized housing houses 1/3 of low-income people. 2/3 of low-income people are in the overall marketplace. They're not in our housing here, right? They don't get the benefits that we have in this housing. Someone else is housing them, but that's only a small part of the multifamily business. So the multifamily business over the 40 years of my career has transformed itself for a bunch of reasons, which we could talk about because they're relevant, but it's become a scale institutional business. There's still lots of mom and pops. There's still a lot of non-scaled businesses, but the business has professionalized, scaled, and institutionalized it to a huge degree. So the thing that I find most important is for people to be able to look outside of their own place. If you're a nonprofit leader, look outside your place to the for-profit affordable world, the broader things that are happening. Look broader to multifamily. Look broader to the housing issues. When I started my career, the housing issues on Capitol Hill were 90% about let's get more subsidies for low-income people in housing. That was the housing discussion and policy discussion in our country. It never made the front page news. Fast forward to the last 10 years, housing is front page news almost every day. Almost none of it is low-income subsidized housing. It might be homelessness, which is a part of our world over to the side. But it's a lot of middle-class people can't afford housing, and they're pissed. And they've taken the conversation away from the conversation that our group wants to talk about in the room. That context is utterly fascinating, and I think that context has lots of opportunity. So to be able to look up to see that stuff, I think is what leaders just have to do.
Yeah. And where would you want them to be? What spaces are they not in, the leaders of affordable housing, that you would want them in? Is it attending like the National Multifamily Housing Council? Is it meeting with peers in the neighborhood or in the community? If you could craft sort of the perfect where to go, what room to be in, what room should they be in?
Yeah, I'm into the Urban Land Institute, so you get a broad view of the real estate world at ULI. But at ULI, the room that most of the people go to is the Affordable Housing Council. They'll know each other. And the Affordable Housing Council has had only one joint meeting with the Multifamily Council.
Interesting.
And I think I made that meeting happen some years ago because we decided to have a broad conversation to unite the two, but they don't talk.
Yeah.
So it's very hard to get this, and there is no prescription of, well, if you go in this room or you read this book, you're going to get there. I think it's a curiosity to have that broader view of the world. And maybe, and there may be two themes. I'll come up with three themes. It's always three. So one is policy. What does it mean? What's the discussion? And again, has the discussion, this is unfair, but has it left low-income housing subsidies behind? Not really, but it's now only a small part of the national discussion on housing issues. So that's one. Two is operations. How do we run these things? And what's technology and people about running our operations? And if there's a place, and affordable housing is far behind, say, the REITs. They just are. And it's not because there's less money to make these things work. It's less sophistication, and it is the size and scale issue. So first question is policy. Second question is operations. And the third question is capital. And capital has come to this business. My next podcast on Leading Voices with a guy named Bob Hart. He's with True America. They just bought a 15, 20,000 unit affordable housing portfolio. It's LIHTC. And he's now going to be in that business, and it's part of his multifamily business platform. And it was bought with institutional capital. Blackstone is in this business with April Housing. They've also been on my podcast. And these are people, we know Alice Carr, who's committed to the business, and she's an insider in the world of the people listening to this podcast. But she's working for Blackstone, running one of the biggest affordable housing platforms. So capital, policy, operations, sophistication, knowing how those work and intertwine, that's really important stuff.
Yeah. A question has occurred to me that you and I haven't talked about before this. A young person interested in stepping into affordable housing today and being a part of this work. They have classes, there are graduate programs now dedicated to affordable housing, right? There's a formality to the education of what it is that we do in this space. What if you had a young person coming to you saying, Matt, I want to be in this affordable housing space? What would your advice to them be?
I'm going to answer it two ways.
Yeah.
So one, if there's a young person caring about real estate and caring about making a difference, I'm thinking people who want to get into affordable housing want to make a difference. And I do believe that there's several ways. So I'll get to affordable housing as the second or third of these.
Yeah.
But real estate makes a difference. Our cities are real estate.
That's right.
To the degree our cities work well, real estate's doing a great job, or our communities are doing a great job, or we've built great communities. So what makes that work well? And so kind of urban development, urban fabric, and not screwing it up, which the industry has done from time to time, right? So doing as best we can, and what does that mean? Second thing is carbon, which I think has disappeared as an issue for at least the next 3 years, but it's a continued issue, and real estate is 1/3 of carbon emissions. So is it tied to the real estate built environment? So if someone wants to make a difference and they see carbon as an issue, then how are we going to help mitigate that issue through being involved with real estate? Then the third component, which is what you asked about, is I'm a young person. I want to get into this. I want to help low-income people who can't afford to live on their own. What do we do? How do we do that? How do we create spaces? How do we finance spaces? So I think that's a wonderful career as well. If I had one thing I might recommend is, because what they're going to do if they come into our industry is they're going to learn how the tax credit works.
Right.
And I think that's really dangerous. Getting back to the fundamentals of real estate, tax credit fundamentals are different than the fundamentals of real estate. I'd prefer someone who understands the fundamentals of real estate, either because the tax credit one day will go away and there'll be a new program, and having learned the ABCs of the LIHTC may not be the thing that's going to matter to them, and they may not be flexible enough to know what's going on. But I think the broader capital markets are important to understand. It's important to understand how transactions, deals, and the economics of the business. Of course, I'm saying operations matter too, which they really do, but to understand the drivers of real estate as investment class, including the tax credit business, is really important. That was a long-winded answer, not telling anyone where to go, but don't get stuck in the tax credit alone. That's which is a whole different theme.
Yeah, learn real estate, the business, right? Broadly. And then LIHTC as a tool, right? And be able to understand and be flexible about the various tools that are out there and the financing structures. Yeah.
That's right. And the business, if there's two sides to the business, let's play with that for a minute, because the part that I emphasized here was understanding how the investment world, because it is investments, this is a capital intensive business. And most of the money is made on the capital side and the transactional side and the investment side of the business. However, the operational side, in knowing how to if you buy an existing tax credit property, knowing what to do with it, how to serve the residents better, which serves the properties better, which serves the investors better. And the operational side of the business is underinvested in it from a human capital standpoint. The best and the brightest often go into the investment side of the business, not the operational side. And that's a real challenge for this industry writ large, all of multifamily. It's a theme that we're thinking about.
Yeah, fair, fair. When we talk about leadership, we often talk about sort of the nuts and bolts of execution and accountability, right? And I appreciate also, you and I have just talked about making sure that you have both the tactical and the horizon strategy sort of in mind. The leadership landscape globally is changing, right? Because of AI, because of the economic uncertainty we have globally. So if I look at the next, 5 to 10 years of what our leaders need to be, I guess I'm asking the question about leaders as human beings. As you think about folks that are stepping into the C-suite, what particular skill or behavior or way do you think we have the opportunity? I'm going to back up and do this again. Okay. Sorry. I was actively thinking and with my mouth open at the same time and it wasn't working. So we'll cut that, Iris.
You were getting there. Okay.
So as we think about leaders in the next 5 to 10 years, there is so much uncertainty and the world is shifting under feet, whether it's economic uncertainty, global uncertainty, AI, who knows? The speed of the change, right, has been exponentially increasing since the age of industrialization. And we continue to ask these sort of human minds that haven't evolved much over the centuries that humans have been walking on this planet. But we're asking folks to do things that are in some ways superhuman, right? As you think about the leadership traits, what behaviors do leaders need to be developing and working on as humans, as individuals, in addition to all of the strategic and the tactical they need to be thinking about to help them be ready for this challenge, to help them be ready to work with their board and step up to the moment?
Couple thoughts come to mind. One, this is something no one can do anything about, but the people we're talking to as leaders are not baby boomers.
That's right.
So we're gone. We're almost gone.
Hey, Gen X here.
Hey, go for it. So we as
We're
me.
almost gone too.
Right. I'm talking for my generation. In
Yeah.
my generation, particularly as affecting the affordable housing business, we created the ethos of it. We created the programs. We created the beliefs in this business. And maybe 5 years ago, I thought the change needed to be that the leaders needed to be diverse, just diverse. Get diverse people, we're going to be okay. It's not that. It's that next generation of thinking, and it may be the next generation. We may skip your generation in what
Gen
these
X,
leaders
yeah.
get to do.
Yeah.
Right?
No, it's the millennials and Gen Z, right? That I'm working with now that are being thrust into leadership.
That's right. So
Boomers are retiring, Gen X just sort of opted out. So yeah.
So they're more used to change. Change is dizzying. We've been talking about through the podcast. A second thing that I think is interesting is they have to be willing to let go and do the right thing. And we knew this topic would come up in the conversation, but there are a lot of particularly nonprofit housing organizations that are still small is beautiful, but it ain't no more. And so you don't need 6 in a city. You don't need 4 in a city. You might need 2 or 3 in a city. You might need 1 in a city. And the one in that city might be in 2 states or 3 states at the same time, because you have to have size and scale to afford some of the stuff that's going on here. You cannot have a property management division of your own company with any quality and skill or any sophistication on technology if you're 1,000 units, 2,000 units.
That's right.
You might be able to do it, and some do. And those are extraordinary leaders who know how to manage something at that low scale and still be kind of competitive in the marketplace. That's competitive is the wrong word, but not 10 steps behind the curve.
That's right.
So how do people, and you don't have to be ahead of the curve in anything, and you don't have to be the best. I was on one of my podcasts. I love this. We had a client, the podcast guest was talking about their business, said, we want to be the best at everything we do. You can't do that. Like, even the best
Right.
tennis player in the world, might have a weak overhead or something. I don't know what it is, but but you don't want to be below average on everything. You don't want to be below average on many things. You don't want to be too far behind the curve on technology, because catching up to the curve, people say they want to be a fast follower. So you want to be a fast follower in everything, and you want to know what's going on, and you know what the future looks like. You want to have your eye on the horizon.
Yeah.
So all of those things matter. But if it's going to your board and saying, hey, we should merge with these guys because together we can then merge with those guys. And now we could be a, East Coast or a Midwest powerhouse, and we can really reach the size and scale, or we could partner with others. Those skills to look outside of that self-interest or the board self-interest, because boards have it too. They like where they sit. They have loyalty to this, but that loyalty doesn't mean anything in 10 years. So asking those hard questions, I think, are the things to do for people who not baby boomers anymore.
Well, and to your point, the boomers who largely built the financial structures, right, the organizational structures in affordable housing that we're living with today. This is also the ethic of preservation of housing. And if size and scale helps us ensure that we can keep these individuals housed, right? That we're not then needing to divest the entire portfolio, and then I can't guarantee the affordability of the property, then we need to be thinking, to your point, outside of ourselves and our own perhaps parochial interests. So yeah.
Totally true. You just raised another topic which we haven't talked about, which is the stock, because most of these companies have made themselves successful by continued development.
Yeah.
And continued development helps fund their overhead and then allows them to own the properties they own, but they may have 4, 5, 10,000 units of housing. And neither the government nor companies are able to adequately invest in those properties. We don't have the dollars for the resyndication of those properties necessarily. We have less dollars being spent on that stuff. Those are more efficient dollars than building new. And so that needs
Yeah,
to be addressed in a big way.
Yeah, if those 15 years were in the Bay Area, yeah, the resyndication will work. If those 15 years, right, were in Omaha, Nebraska, I might not have the funding to be able to adequately maintain that property with a resyndication even.
That's right. So how do we do that? And if it's in the Bay Area, building a new one's could be $1 million a unit. I'm a taxpayer. Someone's going to shoot
Right.
me for this. You don't want to do that. But if I
That's
can
right.
save this unit, which is the stock that matters for those third of the people in the country who are low income, who live in this stuff, I want that done, and I want it to be good, decent stuff, not underinvested in, because that could bring organizations down, and it has. Last comment to this is permanent supportive housing is another challenge to this, and it might be an unfunded mandate challenge that if you sprinkle it in properties, it could hurt those properties and hurt particularly the nonprofits who have taken on that obligation but haven't looked at the meaning of that obligation on a 15-year return on investment or the cost of it to stabilize. So these are all ongoing issues, and these younger people coming into leadership are going to be saddled with solving these questions.
Yeah. Oh my God, we need an entirely separate interview
Yes.
on permanent supportive housing. That's
Okay.
it.
And that's not me. I don't know anything. I know a little bit. I have some clients. We talk about it, and you want to cry because the challenges are so huge, and it's not a housing issue. It's housing and support services and everything else to make. What do we? Last comment is, what do we do to make neighborhoods work and neighborhoods better?
That's right.
So that it's not housing on a prairie, but it's, hey, this housing anchors a neighborhood, and it's right next to a upper middle income neighborhood, and it's great there. Wherever it is, it's rising the boats in the neighborhood. We're anchors of stability. We should be.
You're awesome, Matt.
Thank you. So are you.
Awesome.
This is fun to talk about.
This
We
is
go on
fun.
forever.